Our next speaker is General Eric Autellet, the French Deputy Chief of Defense, who will provide a national perspective on future military requirements. Prior to General Autellet's current position, he served as the Deputy Chief of the Air and Space Force, and in 2018, he became the head of the Chief of the Defense Staff's private office. Previous assignments have included command of Air Base 701 in Salon-de-Provence and the French Air Force Academy, head of operations and international relations at the Office of the Minister of Defense, and the head of the private office of the first French Supreme Allied Commander transformation of NATO. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming General Autellet.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm very happy to be in a piece of NATO in France. It's not usual, and not a lot of people know that in France, and so I'm very happy and to come back in the NATO community. So I will give you a French perspective on where we are currently with all the technology evolution, and it will be a perspective between what we prepared before the 24th of February and also discussion perhaps on what has been done and our thinking since the 24th of February, which is a big change of paradigm, a strategic change of paradigm in the international relation. So I will make 3 short points. First one will be how do the French armed forces understand their action in a dramatically reshaped global environment in Europe and beyond. The second will be about alliance and partnerships. And the third one will be about the NATO strategic adaptation already mentioned by Sakti. So for the first one, just a word about the strategic vision of our French Chief of Defense. It was published in September of 21. And it came just after the Afghan crisis, Pegasus cyber affair, the anti-satellite weapons launch, Wagner in Sahel, and not to mention war in Ukraine right now. So no crystal ball here and nor bragging about supernatural foresight, but what we put in this vision was the confirmation of trends we observe and that have been steadily growing for during the last 20 years. So I will not have a lecture of and a grand strategy lesson here, but just cover 3 bumper stickers about this vision. The first one will be about the paradigm shift. The first one will be about the international relations organized along what we call the triptych of competition, dispute, and confrontation. And so we move from the triptych of the traditional peace, crisis, and war to this triptych: competition, dispute, and confrontation. It's a big change because it means that we are always engaged and always in a competition. And that means for the army, armed forces, that we have to change our mindset, we have to change our organization, and we have to be always ready. And for example, regarding the prism of permanent competition, Europe is precisely the CSR of this new conflict paradigm. We have different actors, different places, different domains, and we are engaged on the east with the Ukraine war, but we are at the same time engaged in Africa, with Wagner in Africa. And we can see we are also in a competition world in Indo-Pacific area. So we have to manage all these states, competition, confrontation, and dispute at the same time. And it will touch down the organization of our C2 and the digital backbone already mentioned before. The second bumper sticker is a declination of the first one and is directly addresses to the armed forces. And it was mentioned by our chief as winning the war before the war. And I will try to explain what does it mean to win the war before the war. It's not going more rapidly to go to the war, but it's doing the right thing before the war, not to be engaged in a war. But with another word, which is we are trying to win the war before the war, but we must be ready to win a war. And we are not avoiding the fight. We mentioned that because our political master, when we are saying that we will win the war before the war, are looking directly to the budget and so to reduce them. And so our message is that we have to do this both. So this message urges, as I mentioned before, that the armed forces must be permanently ready to face major conflict. And they must be ready to act in all environment and fields of confrontation from the very beginning of and from right now. So we believe that the ability to win the war before the war has never been more crucial to military ventures than today. And if you ask me if it's a new way of war, of course not, because we look how info-war, lawfare, attrition have already been extensively and intensively used by our competitors and adversaries in relation to their own use of force. And it means also that we must be ready to be engaged. And the example of Ukraine is a good example. So I use extensively because today we face a tremendous extension of warfare, both in quantity and in quality. And I am here referring to a surge in global defense spending, growing arsenals, but also to the extension of conflict to the newest domain: cyber, space, information, and also cognitive domain. All the more that these fields are characterized by a strong duality in their civilian and military use. And I use also intensively because the intensity of strategic rivalries are sold, and whether they be of financial, commercial, cultural, political, and of course military nature. So in fact, we are probably witnesses the return of warfare as a political intention. I'm sorry, I will try keep some fuel for my English. So speaking about this return of warfare as a political intention, and to summarize, warfare seems again an acceptable way of answering political dilemmas. It's very important because we move at the strategic level. It's a change of paradigm. Based off mondialization, it was the idea that the link and the interdependency between all the countries will preempt the fact that we will go to the war. And the example of Ukraine, Russia and Ukraine shows that this concept is not working. So we are now in a new area, and we have to take into account that mondialization is not the solution to stop war or to preempt war. So no clash of civilization here, but a very vivid reality that our forces will have to face without any doubt: a combination of hybrid threat, a very high intensity combat. And this is not what the past 30 years of military operation have looked like. And don't get me wrong, the soldiers, sailors and aviators of our countries have fought bravely side by side, never looking back. Many of them lost their lives, but and I want here to honor their memory. But what I am seeing here is that the risk of more symmetric encounters, of full-scale, high-intensity conflict, are now back. And in Africa, when the last operation we have done, we have we can control the battle rhythm. We can say, okay, we will stop, we will wait 1 week, or we can deploy more forces. Today, it's more symmetric, and Russia are imposing their battle rhythm also. So it's not the same, and we have to move to this new approach of conducting war. So we have to prepare for more casualties, attrition, impaired logistics. We have also to prepare to plan and conduct operation in contested and denied environments. And we have to prepare for threats in all domains, including, of course, space, cyberspace, infospace, and connective area. And this is where the third bumper sticker I want to kick in is with whom can we face this threat. The message is clear. If the French armed forces have preserved their ability to act alone, now the normal framework of our engagement is in a collective action. And for those knowing the historical position of French in NATO area, you will see that it's a change. We will have a new approach, looking firstly with whom we can fight. So it's an objective we are willfully pursuing as military leader. We know that we are stronger when our allies and partners are linked. We know also that we have to share vision, and that there is always room for debate, and this is the strength of our democracy to have cohesion when we are fighting. So I could say that stick as a team and be ready to engage the new threat we are facing. And we are looking for several frameworks. So NATO, as I mentioned, but also in the EU, and coalition of able and willing nations, but also with bilateral partnerships. These different sources of cooperation are all very useful, and our combined mission in different theaters of operation speaks for themselves. In the Sahel, where we have some European forces, in Syria, it's international coalition, but also in North Atlantic and Eastern Europe when we are in a NATO environment. And we must share vision on some of our future capabilities, including space, missiles, aircraft, ammunition. But you will also agree with me that the war in Ukraine has thrust an unprecedented political momentum for European partnerships in the field of defense and security, both within NATO, with the upcoming strategic concept in a week from now, at the end of June, and in the European Union with its renewed ambition for security and at the heart of the strategic compass, now published and endorsed by the European Council. We are looking also to deepen this cooperation and as we face common threats in all domains, and we need to develop our capabilities accordingly. The main, I will not cover all the domain, but we are putting a strong effort in multi-domain operation. And for us, it's firstly, before a technological challenge, it's firstly a cultural challenge. Because it's a different way of conducting war, it's a different way of planning operation, and it needs a different approach, because we have to look for information coming from information domain, cyber domain, space domain, and so we need to reorganize our C2, both at the tactical level and at the strategic level. And this new approach needs a new C2 organization, and we are working on that. For us, multi-domain operations are probably the new joint area, and it's certainly the next path for interoperability between allies and partners. This is why the French armed forces fully support the ongoing efforts aiming at the strategic adaptation of the alliance, whether they be led by ACO with the DDA or ACT, as it was mentioned by Philippe regarding the NWCC. This strategic adaptation is needed, facing a rapid and changing context, power competition and hybrid threat, in order to strengthen our credibility in the field of defense and deterrence. The aim is to reinforce the defense posture of the alliance through its force structure, while fostering its agility and flexibility. It was mentioned before. And we are looking for an ability to operate 360 degrees, relying on armed forces that are present and effective, well-trained, well-equipped. It brings me to the conclusion, and instead of wrapping up all this concept and doctrine, I will, on the contrary, open the debate by throwing out a few ideas we are looking for in France. And in the 80s, the quintessence of battle management was target allocation. We used to plan the target for the shooter, in what it was the 18th. Then, with multi-role platforms in the 19th, we shift to the best target for the best shooter. Then, in the new millennium, along with the network-centric warfare, we were able to allocate the best target to any shooter. In the information age, we are now reaching the stage of any target, any shooter. Or should I say any data to any user. In other words, where detention of information used to be a decisive power in warfare, distribution of information is now the new grail. We have to extract the right data in any data concretion, lake or ocean, and we have to be able to distribute it to the right system in any architecture we will use to fight. Here comes a paradox, a new paradox. This data needs to be hugely accessible in an open cloud and protected at the same time, proclaiming zero trust in potentially subversive user. And the first lessons coming from Ukraine are supporting this new approach we have to work on. In fact, this data needs to be in two different status at the same time. This paradox does Kim in which quantum theory. I could go for hours on this new approach of data. I will just resume the challenges we are looking at for us. Firstly, the change of mindset. Secondly, the processes, how we worked. And thirdly, concept development. We have to put the operational at the heart of the reflection, and think firstly at what do we want, and then how we will do it. And this process is very important for us. Thank you very much for your attention, and ready to answer a question if we have time.
We have time for just one question, if you're willing, sir.
Thank you for a very interesting overview. One of the things about maintaining a technology edge is the speed of adoption and the speed of adaptation. So do you think NATO and the coalitions, they're a bit like a ship in the ocean? Do you think they'll adapt fast enough to new technologies?
Good question. We have to adapt rapidly, because if we are not adapting, the enemy will win. The winner in a fight, in a military fight, is the guy who is adapting the faster. So we will have to do it. Regarding the adaptation, yes, we will adapt, but as I mentioned, if you ask me what is the main challenge of the next weeks or months, is that we have to change the mindset of people, and it's mainly based on a problem of generation, because we have a change of paradigm also in the digital world. First one was, and it was the world we lived in for us. It was more system of information, very in pillar, and a lot of information going from the tactical level to the strategic level. Now we have a new paradigm, and I think the young people know it better than us, which is cloud, intelligence, EA, and also big data, and they are used to use this very fastly. When I look at my HQ, a lot of people are keeping all the data in their computer, but today we don't have to do this, and so we have to change this mindset, and we have to change also the processes. We have to change the way the procurement is done, because as we mentioned, the loop of numerical approach is not the same as a big program like aircraft or vessel and so on. So yes, and the pressure of the war in Ukraine is putting on us. It's a good opportunity to change all this. So I am confident that we will be ready to do that, and we will succeed.
Thank you, sir, for your perspectives.